so far has been going through the marriage conversations the last few weeks. This is our last one. So excited to jump in with you guys and go through one more. And, as we kick this off, we have lots of questions that keep coming in. And so I have one more. I'm going to keep talking while I get my iPad out. I remember what the first one is. So after 40 years of marriage, the question came in, how can you keep your marriage fresh, keep it from being stale, and keep it growing year after year? So we're going to kick it off with that today as we get started.
I'm just going to begin by saying, I think I said this the first Sunday, that marriage, I'm not a wine drinker, but from what I understand, the longer a wine processes, the better it becomes. And I just think that's the way marriage is. But to keep it fresh, if Mr. Analogy, if you look at food products, if you leave your food set out, it becomes stale when it's left out to the elements of this world. And so we have to preserve it, refrigerate it, we have to seal it, we have to protect it, we have to shelter it. And so if we're not doing those things in our marriage relationship, our marriages will become stale. So we have to guard and defend. And then I think about a body of water that has no spring feeding it, there's no stream trickling into it. Water becomes stale and stagnant, and it really begins to smell and to stink when there's not life coming into it. And so I think about that in our marriages, in our relationships, is we get stale because we're not bringing anything new into the relationship. We're not going on new dates and new adventures, and we need to look of how can we go back to some of the first things that we did that made our relationship special. Jesus challenged us as believers. He said, look how far you have fallen, turn back to me and do the first works you did at first. It's true in our faith and it's true in our marriages. The simplest things, remember when you would talk on the phone for like 2 hours and just listen to each other breathe?
And you couldn't get very far from the wall.
Yeah, that was back in our day. But those simple things of taking those date nights, of holding hands and doing those, go back and do those first works. What made your marriage and your relationship special in the beginning? And then I think of our electronics that need to continually be recharged and need to be plugged in. That is the same in a marriage relationship. We have to continually recharge. I think one of the myths is we said, I do, and I told you I loved you, and she told me that she loved me on our wedding day, and that's somehow supposed to suffice for the duration of our marriage. We have to continually be charging our relationship and charging one another.
And don't be disappointed, I think. When your electronics, when the battery kind of goes down, you don't go, dang it. What? I didn't anticipate this happening. You have to recharge. So don't be disappointed when your relationships need to be recharged. That's just part of life. So,
I would ask husbands and wives, do you know what charges or recharges your spouse?
That's a good question.
Do you know when they're feeling a little glum and low, what gets it up? Well, you guys didn't know it, but you've seen the new little iPad chargers that you lay your phone on and it just charges by laying on it. I apparently have one built in on my left chest because what recharges her is she goes, can I just lay my head on your shoulder? And isn't that sweet? It used to bug me. It honestly used to bug me. I'm like, what am I, a charging pad? It was, and it was like, she goes, I don't know what it does. It just does something. So whether we recline on our sofa or lean back on the pillows, she just wants to snuggle in. And her just putting her head there is some power. Comes out and charges her. I know that a hot bubble bath will recharge her. I know that if she's feeling a little glum, she needs to get outside. We need to go sit on the deck. We need to go take a hike. We need to go take a walk. We need to do something like that. I know that to recharge her is not inviting 20 people over for dinner. She wants a novel and it quiet and no music on because it distracts from her novel. There's nothing else going on. She just wants to isolate and focus. And then I don't dance in public. We don't go there. I'm not doing that. But when we'll dance at home, I'll turn on some tunes on our ceiling speakers, turn on some tunes and do some slow dancing. She's like, oh, and it's great.
I would say maybe also find a hobby together. He tried to get me to learn to play golf.
I'm still hopeful.
Okay, well, give it up. Because every time he plays golf, he is frustrated.
For a moment, but then it's a beautiful thing.
No.
It's a tormenting thing.
No. And then it's like, why would I want to sign up and be frustrated? Because I would like to accomplish something. But as I see it, golf is just like constantly a never achieving thing. Never mind. But find something to do together. One time we were actually going on vacation and I took a deck of cards. And one evening I said, you want to play cards?
That's because she kicks my butt in every card game.
But he said, okay, so we just played cards for like 15 or 20 minutes, and then he goes, okay, don't let me win. You know, a guy thing, right? Don't let me win.
Well, you know, when you're down 5-1, you can feel Mercy picking up, and she's like, okay, let's see. Here, you get that card, and you get that card.
Find some things you do together. And let me just explain something. We're talking about marriage, and you're like, but I'm not married. But you have a lot of relationships. Why would we nurture some of our same gender relationships and not nurture our marriage relationships if you're married? Why do you think of it as a chore when it's your married relationship, but yet you'd go out of your way, you'd go backwards and forwards for one of your best buddies or one of your best friends? This relationship is longer term and more important, so you need to treat it that way.
And to keep it fresh, make out frequently. There it is. There's
None of
your
the guys,
homework.
I thought the guys would be more excited about that one.
That's your homework. I gave it to you the first week. I'm giving it to you on the last one. Make out frequently. Pastor said.
Go make out. Do
Our
it.
children love this series.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Comfortable over there? Yeah. All right. Who wrote that down? Go make out. Anybody? Put it on your notes. Okay. 3 people. All right. All right. Well, as we dive into this next question, I kind of chuckled because how many of you think I'm a good communicator, right? And then you realize that what you said and what they heard didn't line up? Never? Nobody. Just me in my house. Okay, cool. Well, talk to us a little bit about communication. What are the things you do to keep healthy lines of communication open? What are things you do? What are things you don't do that you found in your marriage? You go, this is things we don't do. We don't do that, and it helps the communication
Okay.
flow better.
Everyone is a little different. We talk about the spender, the saver, the differences, right? So in here, then if in a relationship you are traditionally the one who has more words, raise your hand. Be proud. Come on, raise your hand. Are you the one that has the more words? Okay, put your hands down. Those of us who have fewer words.
Be proud. Be proud.
Yes. And it's not
They don't
all.
want to raise their hand.
They didn't. I know. They don't know what they are. But traditionally, though, it's not always gender. We often will go, oh yeah, the women talk all the time, but it's not always that way. It sometimes is reversed. So when talking to someone about something, I'm just going to remind you of a few things. Don't try to fix it. I feel like if I'm talking to Dean about something, and
Has somebody in your world tried to?
and so if he tries to fix it, then I usually feel dumb. It's like, I know that. I really am just wanting someone to listen. So don't try to fix it. For women, traditionally, again, don't have to gender it, but traditionally, these are good things. If you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know, write it down. Ask your spouse. That's going to be the big thing of the day. Ask questions, okay? Tone is most important to women. Tone is actually traditionally more important than the
Tone is
actual
huge.
words being said. Don't make fun of me.
It's huge.
It's huge. Okay, perspectives are essential in communicating. Try to see things from the other person's point of view.
It's good.
Take the focus off yourself. And again, be curious. Ask questions. So when someone's asking or talking and you're not sure, it sounds like ask a question.
And I would jump in and help us all understand, if you don't know it, that men communicate best shoulder to shoulder. Most women prefer the face-to-face. And so you have to have a mix of both. You can't just be one way or another. But ladies, let me help you understand your man. He's going to do best. If you're really wanting to get him talk, say, hey, let's go take a ride. Hey, let's go get a coffee. Let's go do something. Go take a ride. Shoulder to shoulder in the car. You'll get him going. We had a hot tub when we had teenagers. If you have teenagers, I recommend a hot tub because I would get them in the hot tub and the heat begins to wear them down, and they begin to get very relaxed, and then they just begin to talk. And seriously, we would have great talks in the hot tub with our kids and as a family, and then as well with one another. But if he's out in the garage tinkering around on something, take a bar stool out, sit on the bar stool, and just kind of strike up a conversation. Guys, I'm going to tell a secret on us, and so you're just going to have to deal with it. Part of it is we don't want to look eye to eye because that makes us feel insecure. Because we're insecure in ourselves, we're insecure if you know me, if you see what's on the inside of me, do you really like me, do you love me? And so this is more comfortable because I don't have to look into the windows of her soul and she's not digging into mine. And so it's a little easier for me to share those feelings and emotions when she's not looking down into my soul. And so give your man tons of affirmation. He's insecure. Give him the affirmation. It helped build his confidence. I heard this years ago. I don't know where I saw it, read it. It's so true. A man will slide down a mountain of razor blades into a pool of lemon juice just to hear the words, "You're the man." And so, guys, I'm going to give you my $1 million clues. Number one is she alluded to it. I'm just going to bring some clarity to it. She wants to be heard. Put a big period when you write that down. That's it. She wants to let it out. I thought she was sharing it because she needed my help to fix it. I thought she was sharing it because she wanted to correct me, that she was trying to fix me. And so then I would get defensive and say, I didn't mean that. I'm not that. I didn't. And all she wants to do is say it. Okay. And then here's the second big clue, is you lean in and you say, tell me more about that. And she wants to share a little bit, and she'll light up. She's like, really? All right. Wow, tell me more. And then here's another trick for me. When we go on a date, we went out to celebrate last night. We went out for dinner, and I positioned, we were at a restaurant, and there were TVs over here on this side, so I had to sit this way. Because if there's TVs in my view, squirrel, somebody scored a touchdown, I have to do that, and then share your pet peeve, your electronic pet peeve.
Okay, well, put electronics away. Be present. That is a big trigger for me, if you will, not just with him, but in all my relationships. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this myself, but I am saying that it shows to me disinterest, right? You get a text and I'm in the middle of pouring my heart out, I'm done. That's not safe for me, right? To me, that's not a safe place. So put your electronics away. I want to go back to looking into someone's eyes and when you're talking to them. Because, guys, I want to tell you, if that's you or women, that's being vulnerable. And so I want to just tell you that kind of vulnerability is super sexy. That makes me feel super important. Okay, here we go.
Whoa. That's for later.
Okay, a few more things on communication. Think before you speak. Proverbs 10:19 says, where there are many words, transgression is unavoidable, but he who restrains his lips is wise.
That's good.
I'm going to say a few other things. Listen without judgment. Often what you think and what you've heard is not, like Pastor Aaron kind of started this whole thing with, is not necessarily what's being said. You may need to repeat it back. So are you saying, this happens recently with us, are you saying da-da-da-da-da? No. Okay, then sometimes I won't even ask that. I'll just say, can you say that a different way? Because I know his heart. I know his heart isn't to be unkind or to make me feel a certain way, right? That's not his heart. So can you say that a different way? Active listening says I care, so that eye contact thing is important. And then a big one, don't interrupt. It's so hard. The closer I am to you, the more I interrupt you, which is unfortunate. But if you will just count to 2, and I'm not saying 1, 2, I'm saying 1001, 1002, and put pauses before the next one speaks, that could save a marriage, to be honest. That really could save a marriage. If you could just push pause. You have to decide what's more important, your perception or their reality. What's more important? Your perception or their reality, and you just sometimes need to ask.
And there's a big difference between hearing someone and truly listening.
Right.
I can hear with my physical ears. I listen with my heart and my mind and my soul as to what is really being said. And then I would encourage you to communicate with all avenues. Communication is not just verbal.
Right.
It is touch. It is eye contact. It's body language. It's facial nodding. It's leaning in. It's acting interested. And so use all of those resources in communication. And then we laid out some things that we call foul balls, yellow flag thrown, and that are the all-inclusive words. Never, always, you never, every time. And I'd be a little smart, whatever, and I'd go, oh, so every time this happens. And then she's like, that's not what I'm saying. And I didn't handle that well, but it's all-inclusive. It's not every time, it's not always, it's not never. So we have removed those from our communication vocabulary. And then we also refrain from you statements and convert them to I statements. Instead of saying you always or you make me feel, say I feel this way when you do this or when you said that. I felt, not you made me feel. You made me is an accusation.
Right.
And so we want to cut the red wire in our conversation.
Just creates defensiveness.
Yep.
Okay, my turn? Okay.
You didn't count to 2.
I didn't. Let me see. 1001. Okay. Here's a few communication techniques, especially during conflict. Rules for the speaker. Speak for yourself. Don't mind read. Okay? You think, well, I really can't tell you what he's thinking unless he's already said that, right? So that kind of implies that you're mind reading. Keep statements brief. Don't go on and on and on and on, right? Eye rollings.
Guilty.
Yeah. 45 adjectives later, it's like I kind of got it at the beginning there. If you're listening, maybe paraphrase what you hear. Focus on the speaker's message, on what the other person is saying, not on your rebuttal. That's a huge thing. I think we all kind of do that. While they're talking, and I can multitask, right? I can listen to what you're saying and get my rebuttal ready. And you saw me do it a few weeks ago, right? He took a breath, and I just went for it. Yes, there's that. So I'm just saying, don't just get your rebuttal ready. Really be an active, good listener. And then for both of you, whoever's speaking, they have the floor. Leave them and let them have the floor until they're done. Share the floor, and don't bring up the way past. If you ever, when a kid, if you've got siblings, especially if you have a bunch of siblings, do you ever just do a pile-on where someone's at the bottom and they all just start piling on, right? So if you're talking about the way past, it's going to feel like, I can't get out from underneath this. This is too much.
Stay focused on the one issue. Because a lot of times, if one of us brings up an issue, it triggers, oh yeah, I meant to tell you that this bothered me. And so then they begin to share their issue, and now we're multi-tracking, and we need to stay focused. Let's resolve yours. Let's table that one. Let's resolve your issue. Let's bring this to completion. Then we'll begin on your concerns or...
And to reinforce your argument, right? Let me just bring up the other 182 times you've done this, because this is good, right? Remember, and I'm just like, blah, 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 and I'm sure it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so in the doghouse. Well, that's just not productive. Stick with where you are. Okay.
Okay.
It's good. Love it. I love what you said there about you paraphrase back what you've heard. Mm-hmm. I know I heard one time about communication. The sender sends a message, and if the receiver can send it back and tell you what they said to your satisfaction, then you're understanding one another. So it's that like, did you understand? And okay, that's not what okay, let me try again. And sometimes you have to go at it 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. to get the message across. So, excellent. Well, as we move on, this is something very interesting to think through, not just in relationship in our marriage, but also in our lives. I read an article that stress is higher than it's ever been in mankind. Like there's more stress, more people, and I believe that's associated with the speed of life that's happening. Things are happening faster and faster, and there's more and more things going on. So give us, what's a secret to navigating crisis? Whether it's just that constant stress in our life, or if there's been like, hey, here's a whole chain of events or things that have happened that have escalated everything at home, and what you did to overcome that together in your relationship.
I think one of the biggest things, I love multiple translations and versions of the Bible and reading them from different insights, and I enjoy the Amplified, and it's more words, and it amplifies the thought or the meaning that's there. And I would say that a lot of us are guilty of living in the amplified version of life. That something small happens and we amplify it, we magnify it, we make it bigger than maybe it really is. And we have faced, in 40 years, obviously you're going to face anything and everything. We, first when we were married, we faced infertility. Then we had kids, we faced life and death surgeries. We faced transitions and work and finances and so forth. But to just help you put it in perspective, I want to share the hurricane of 2010. Because it wasn't a Cat 5, it was about a Cat 12. 14 years ago this fall, would have been the fall of 9, is when the storm first came in. We had a young man who had been a part of our church, family had been a part of our church. He and his dad ushered first service. He went home that afternoon, and while doing homework, took a gun and took his own life. And that was the first time we'd ever dealt with a tragedy that up close and that up front. And so we were dealing with that and go through that. He was very well known and liked in his school. It was a very high profile situation, and it's just emotionally taxing and draining. Short time, that was in the fall. Just go forward a couple months. We have a family in the church, young family, 3-month-old baby. They wake up, the baby had died from SIDS, no cause, just that sudden thing. And so the worst funerals to do are children. And so on Friday, I do the burial of the baby and the child, and the younger sister had become pregnant and delivers the baby on Saturday, and she has an adoption plan because she wasn't in place to parent. And so here are the grandparents that buried a baby on Friday, and on Monday we're having a dedication service with this new grandbaby that's been born, and they're placing the child for adoption. And it's just gut-wrenching, and you're seeing all of that. We leave the hospital, and I said to Kim, let's just go to Starbucks. Let's just grab a Starbucks. And we're sitting down, and we just like taking a few sips of coffee. And the owner of the building that we were leasing at the time, I said, it was Monday, and it was supposed to be our day off, but we're doing ministry. And I said, he knows my day off. He's calling. I'm going to answer it. And I answer the phone. I go, hey, Steve, what's up? He goes, Dean, there's a dead body in your office. I said, say what? I said, we have a mannequin. Are you looking through a window or something? He said, no, there's a dead body in your office. They're working on him. I don't think he's going to live. I said, I'll be there in 10 minutes. He says, it's a tall guy, tall, bald guy. I'm like, oh. I walk in, and there's Mark. And Mark had a heart attack, fallen off the ladder. He has died. Kim needs to go tell the wife, and I stay there with the police and trauma. And now we're well into 2010. The economy crashed for most of American 8. It really hit strongest here in 10. The church is suffering financially. We have a dead person in our church office. We have a major surgery of one of our kids is going through. And then I need to release a staff member, a visible staff member, due to 1 year full long of lack of performance and underperforming, and let him go. And he goes out spraying toxic lies. And we have 30 to 40 families leave. And no one asked Dean, what's the real story? They believed his lies. And I'm telling you about sucking you dry and walking through a difficult season of life. So here's a couple things I would say. Number one, remember who the enemy is, and it's not her, and it's not me.
Right.
Because the enemy wants to divide you. And if he can use this crisis, tragedy, however big or small it is, to get you on opposite sides of the fence and get division and break your unity, then he can win. United we stand, divided we fall. So we need to reaffirm our love frequently for each other, more than even usual. And then here is a big one. You need to get God's word on it. What is God saying? How is God coaching you? You need to get in the presence of God and hear his voice.
And acknowledge that there's a stress.
Right.
I think if you just kind of don't ever say anything and all this goes on, acknowledge this is a lot. There's a lot going on, and just acknowledging that. And I'm going to tell you that the things that he's told you are all external, and sometimes they're internal. In other words, other things have happened that have created that stress, but there are times in relationships and in marriages where you've created the stress, right? So there is someone's having an emotional affair with someone of the opposite sex, or a physical affair, right? There are times where you've blown things up, right? You've kind of gone, right? But so there's external ones and internal ones, but talking about it and acknowledging it, hugging more, staying connected, there's nothing more that the devil wants than just to break us apart, right? But just touching each other's arm or leg or whatever, and hugging was a really big deal and important.
Well, and here's what I want to say about having the God word. I mean, just in the past week, since we saw you last, the first of this past week, Kim called me with some very troubling, concerning news. And I can tell you exactly where I was. I said, okay, I'll be home in a few minutes. We'll pray. And I remember I was on I-25. I was about a mile south of Interquest exit. It is a vivid picture in my mind. I disconnected on the steering wheel on the phone. I said, God, I need your help. I need your guidance. And like just out of my heart, as soon as I heard this, don't overreact. It's not as big of a deal as it seems right now. I went home and I said to Kim, I said, here's what I hear God saying. Don't overreact. It's not as big of a deal as it seems right now.
And on Tuesday, that was on Tuesday, and on Wednesday it got worse.
It ramped up even worse. And on Thursday, it ramps up even worse. For 72 hours, the situation looks. And I kept holding on to that. When you know you have a God word,
right,
it helps you get through the storm. Because here's what we need to know. Just as in our natural world is an analogy for help us understand our spiritual world, no storm lasts forever.
Right.
Storms are temporary.
Seasons.
They feel like forever. But that hurricane that was hitting us in 2010, it was like, when is this going to end? It was a big storm, and it was a longer than shorter process. But here's what I know. By the time Friday rolls around, what elevated to a 9 on that 1 to 10 scale, reality came in at that about a 1 to 2. I can deal with a 1 to 2. But when it was bigger, and the Lord just kept saying, hold steady.
And there was a
steady.
family member that said the exact same thing, not even knowing what you had said. And it was just confirming.
And so we need to acknowledge when we're having a bad day. That helps me when she says, hey, it's not you. It's the stress of the situation. And our agreement is we both can't have a bad day on the same day.
So there was one time
It's my day. No, it's my day to be down.
I said, I'm having a really hard day, and he seriously looked at me and he goes, no.
You had yesterday,
and today's my day to have a bad day, so you just need to pull it together. And then we laughed about it, but that's what we needed to do. You needed to kind of release it a little bit and laugh about it, right?
And our biggest mistake from 2010, I'm a much better person, believer, follower, and pastor, is I would say our biggest mistake is we tried to fight and navigate it alone.
Yeah.
And I thought, to be a good pastor, I shouldn't tell anybody what we're going through. We need to hold this, which we and that's when our counseling journey began individually and as a couple as we were navigating these multiple storms. But what I needed is to be able to tell some people, and I don't need you to fix it, and I'm not going to try and fix you. But what we all need is someone to say, hey, I'm sorry you're going through that.
Tell me more.
I care. Tell me more about that. And what are you doing? How can I help you?
And I also want to say he started this crisis thing talking about many of us, many will amplify certain situations. I will say that I tend to do just the opposite, and so some of you may be more like me where I tend to minimize, right? So you think of all this stuff and all of it's spinning up, and I tend to minimize and just kind of put a lid on it, and put a lid on it, and put a lid on it, and that's not healthy. So in case you're one of those that minimizes it, sometimes you have to just say, this is a lot, this is hurtful, this is hard. Maybe you just need to acknowledge some of those, and I probably am the one that is the worst, and I tried to do better this past week with what we were going through by being a little more honest with some family, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to pick one friend, I'm going to call one person and tell them what's going on, and I'm doing better at that because I tend to be the more private one and put the lid on it, and then put the guidelines on what everyone can tell in the family. So I'm doing better about it, but in case you minimize, talking about it and all, I'll just tell you, it's like you have a pressure cooker and it just builds and builds and builds, and just when you talk, you just release that valve a little bit. Let the steam come out a little bit. You'll be surprised how healing that is. Again, the person hasn't fixed it, but you've talked.
I was at Tuesday night, I was at a dinner with city leaders, pastors, community leaders, business leaders, and our new mayor. And they had a panel of different ones, and we're talking about, but I'm just going to get to this. The number one, in the United States of America, the number one mental health issue and physical health issue is a result of our biggest problem is loneliness and solitude, of being pulled away, and that loneliness creates all of these other issues that feed down many, many channels. And so I'm very excited to say that our mayor in 2024, one of his visions for Colorado Springs is to combat loneliness. And his goal that he introduced Tuesday night is in 2024 for the city of Colorado Springs to host 1,000 neighborhood block parties. And Rock Family Church is going to lead the way in doing our portion and doing our share.
What was the statistic? The statistic that he shared, if you have 6.
If you know 6 of your neighbors, the statistics drop incredible on the loneliness factor, health issues go up, mental health increases because you feel like you have community and you feel like you're known. And so that's what we can be for each other.
That's good. I want to go back and just dig in this a little bit more just for a minute and ask you guys, you shared about how it's important to share with others and to basically invite people in to the crisis or the stressful time in your life. But what changes? What changes in that when you say, you know what, I'm going to share, but then what's that do? Or what have you seen that do, the difference? Like looking back, hey, we did that all on our own and the effects, and we didn't do this all on our own.
It's knowing you have a support system in you and around you. It's knowing what makes a problem feel overwhelming is it feels like me or maybe the two of you against a crisis. But now the beauty of church is when you have a family of believers or your small group or whoever that community is, that you're able to say, hey, I'm going through this. Hey, I'm dealing with a financial situation. Hey, I'm struggling with a bad doctor's report. There's that community of strength that you feel and know, hey, I have a family that's standing with me, whether that's your natural family or the beauty of a spiritual family.
And I would say it's just such a big deal to have people around you. So if I think Dina said before, so if you got really good news and you got $1 million dropped into your account today, who would you call? Okay, then if you got really bad news, who would you call? And if you can't list some of those people, you need to right now analyze that and say, I need to get in a small group. I need to lean into
Some relationships.
some relationships. There's something I need to change that. If you wait until that happens and you have no one, that's going to be really sad.
That's great. It's good. Make your list if you know who that is. All right. The next question we want to dig into today is navigating parenting years. You guys have kind of passed through that season, and how you maintained a healthy relationship through that in raising your kids and still making sure there was time for each other in your relationship.
All right, for those of you who are parents, if you're the one that's the more lenient parent, raise your hand. Come on, be proud. Oh, look, this one wife is nudging her husband. That's you. That's you. Okay, and if you're the more strict parent, raise your hand. Right? So
Every party has a pooper. That's why we invited you.
No. Don't laugh. That's what God does. It's like the spender.
balance.
It's the spender, the saver. If we're all the same, right? That is balance. And even if the margin is just a little different, it just tends to be a little different. So don't lean into that, and that's good. But
Embrace that.
Most
It's
important,
healthy to have the differences.
right? Most important parenting technique, or one of the most important things, is having a very good relationship with your spouse and learning to what we're talking about. We just talked about communicating well, because they are going to reproduce that. If you go, where did I start my marriage, or where did I start any relationship? My relationships in school. By the time I was in 4th grade, where did I start and how I communicated? You learned it all from home, and then you started putting your own spin on it. You learned different things, right? But that's where you start with. So remember, as parenting, you're giving those children a foundation. So I hope it's not a foundation of raised voices and of name calling.
Right.
I hope that's not the insecurity that you're starting with, and that's where they're starting to build. I'll never forget, and I've told this story on myself before, where I turned and one of my children, in talking to their siblings, the Lord just probably did it. It looked like me. Right? It looked like something, and they started talking a certain way, and it was like, I will never. And from that day forward, I didn't raise my voice as much, right? The words they used, the verbiage they used, you could tell they were repeating, and they were 4 years old. They were 4.
They'd already picked up that
They'd already
behavior.
picked it up, and it was like, oh my gosh, never again. Never again will I do that. So the most stability in parenting that you can have is show them that your relationship is strong. And then, I think Dean will hit on this in a minute, but if they are the most important thing in your life over your spouse, boy, you're setting them up. I don't want my child to marry yours, because I'm just telling you, they'll just think it's always all about them. Our kids, I think, knew, and we demonstrated that our marriage was first.
Well, and here's what happens, and here's the catch-22 for a lot of women and a lot of men. Not stereotyping everybody, but it's the box we tend to put ourselves in. Women will pursue having their emotional needs met by the love of that child and the embrace of that child, and they will find that their emotional need is getting met, and so they're not pulling on their husband. Their husband senses their wife pulling away, or vice versa, and the husband's working. The husband gets his emotional needs met by their accomplishments. And wow, I made that extra sale, and I got this extra badge, and I got this extra promotion. And so they're getting that promotion. And so the wife says, well, I'm not getting emotional needs met, so I'm going to pull on the kids. Who was first? I don't know, the chicken or the egg. But the result is both spouses are pulling away, and the gap is widening in their relationship and in their connection. And their world revolves around the kids. And when the last kid goes away, they look at each other and they're strangers. They look at each other and they don't know each other. They don't have a relationship. They have nothing to base it on. So keep one another as the priority. My relationship with God first, my relationship with my spouse. And one of the things I always appreciated that Kim did, Miss Analytical, I'm the free willy. Don't let him stay up. Here's what I loved about the rules is by 8 p.m., our kids were knocked out asleep, and we had, for her, 8 to 10 p.m., when I could stretch her to 8 to 11, 8 to midnight. That was always something to look forward to in the busyness of the day, that I get to see her, be with her. We have 2 to 3 hours. If you're a morning person, do the opposite. Get up before the kids, have your coffee together, have that connection time that you have with each other. And then one of the things that helped us regain our parent time was esteeming our children as adults when they turned 13. We gave them each birthday more and more adult things. Well, guess what?
Relieved
It
us.
relinquished us of some of our parental duties, because now at age 15, they're doing their own laundry. They are navigating their own budget, and it freed us up. And we were thrilled when Alicia, when we said she'd passed her little babysitting course, and we're like, we're going to Taco Bell. We're going to be right up the street. We're an hour away. You got this, girl. And you could begin to lean into those relationships.
And I would say it's not equal time. Those little kids, man, especially if you've got more than one, they're just like time suckers, just saying, right? And so it's not equal time, but make some time for each other, make it quality time. And then when you're talking about discipline issues, and we just talked about the more lenient and the stricter and all of that, in front of the kids, we agreed. And then we could say, privately, we would say something different. We finally also learned that, they would always go ask Dean because he said yes. And so then they would go ask him, and he finally went, let me talk to Mom and I'll get back with you, right? So that, because he didn't always know all the other schedule and all the other 85 things that the child had asked or was doing, or what had happened, or maybe this was a consequence or whatever. So in front of the kids, discipline-wise, be on the same page, but get it figured out in the back. Now, Dean wasn't as much of a reader at the time, and definitely not on parenting books. I would do it. He goes, take notes and just give me the clip notes.
No, she'd give me the highlighted copy.
Yeah.
I'd read the highlighted version of the parenting book.
And we were fine with that. For us, that was okay. And there was a time where I'm like, read this whole chapter, and the rest just look at my notes. So that's kind of how we did it. And then the last thing I'll say about parenting is the same thing I said, and one of the other things is put your electronics away and be present.
It's good.
Nothing's more frustrating than being at a restaurant and looking over, and people that are waiting on a table, a family dinner, someone as young as 2 and 3 years old, everybody's got their own screen, waiting to be called to dinner, and then you see them at dinner, same thing, they haven't put them away, and then we wonder why we're lonely.
And here's what I would say. You're building a marriage and a relationship for that day that you are a husband and a wife once again. You started out that way, and I would tell you this is some of our most enjoyable times of our marriage relationship, when we are empty nesters. We love being the grandparents. We love having a relationship with our kids, but we love having the TV to ourselves. We love nobody's waking us up other than the little 4-pound dog sometimes. We love the freedom that we have, that we can just pick up and go and do something at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and we're not concerned about that. And so it's just a beautiful season. Once you get through the parenting season,
Look forward to this.
Look forward to that, and it's a lot cheaper on vacation too. I'm just telling you. So we're out of time. Would you guys stand with me? And thank you so much, Aaron and Scott, for hosting us. And thank you for guys listening, for allowing us to just share some thoughts and insights. And once again, we don't have it all together. And if you say, hey, I need to talk to someone, if you want to come and talk to one of our pastors, that's cool. We can recommend some counselors that will help you. Maybe get together with some of the, if you're a younger couple, get together with an older couple and just ask their wisdom and ask their advice. Heavenly Father, thanks for the privilege to just come together as a church family, as a spiritual family, and to do life together. Lord, I pray that this week in every home, in every relationship, not just in marriage, but every relationship that we have, Lord, I pray that you would help us to focus on the good, focus on the positive, to affirm one another, to give just blessing to one another. It's so easy to find one another's faults, but let us be an encourager to each other this week. Even as we sit down in just a few minutes for some lunch, let us find the good traits and attributes that we value and love and appreciate about each other, and share those and be an encouragement to one another. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Before we go, heads up, eyes open, everyone looking around. It's always interesting to me when we have new people come to the church and they will ask and they'll say, I've never been to a church that does that. Why, when you're giving an invitation for people to accept Christ, to receive God's love, do you do it open and transparent like that? Let me tell you why. Because I love you. Because if I said every head bowed and every eye closed and no one looking around, and I said, who wants to start new or start over in your walk with God? And in that moment, you felt safe. Oh, good. Here is a safe space and place. What is it that you're feeling? Nobody will know. Nobody will know. Here's what I want to say to you. If you can't say yes to Jesus in a room filled with his followers and his disciples, that little secret prayer won't live past the breath going past your lips. Because when you get out in the real world and a friend says, hey, go golfing with me this Sunday, and you say, no, I can't, I'm going to church. And they say, going to church? Well, I just sometimes go, maybe I can play this Sunday. If you can't stand up for Jesus in his church, you'll never stand up for Jesus out there. So in all honesty, I want to respect you, and I want to honor you, and I want to esteem you for your faith and for your boldness to stand up for Jesus here. Because today is the day, the beginning. Jesus said, if you're ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of you before my Father. But he said, if you boldly declare me, he said, in this world, he said, I'll boldly declare to the Father that you are his and that you're a part of our family. So I want to ask you, wherever you are in your walk with God, do you need to start new? Do you need to start over? Is there something standing between you and God? Today, you can be restored into a loving, giving, thriving, blossoming relationship with God. I'm going to count to 3. And if that's where you are and you say, I need God, I want you to raise your hand. And when you do, this place is going to cheer and celebrate. First service, 5 people said yes to Jesus. Not one of them felt bad. Not one of them. They all felt better. They all felt loved, and they all felt welcome. So today's your day. Now's your turn. On the count of 3, starting new or starting over. 1, 2, come on. 3, raise that hand really high. There's 1 right there. Is there anybody else? There's 2 right there. There's 2. Is there anybody else? Raise that hand high. I'm so proud of you guys. Anybody else? Thank you for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed the service. If you live here in Colorado Springs or you're going to be in the city, I hope that you'll come and experience the service firsthand. And for those of you that are enjoying the ministry and you're being fed to on a weekly basis, I invite you to partner with us financially and make an investment into the mission and the vision of Rock Family Church. And lastly, if you've never made a commitment and a decision to make Jesus Christ the Lord of your life, would you make that decision today? Why wait till tomorrow? Why wait till next weekend? I dare you to pray this prayer with me. Would you close your eyes? Would you pray this prayer with me and repeat it? It goes like this. Pray this with me. Say, Dear God, forgive me of all of my sins and mistakes. I believe Jesus died on the cross for my sins. And I invite him to be the Lord of my life. Thank you for loving me and forgiving me. My life is now in your hands. Jesus Christ is my Lord. Amen. Hey, thanks for making that commitment. Will you email us at info@rockfamilychurch.com? Tell us about your new decision to stand up big and live strong for Jesus Christ. We'd love to celebrate with you. God bless you guys. We'll see you next weekend.